I remember the first time I saw her again. It was a gray Wednesday afternoon, the kind of overcast that makes even happy things look sad. I stood by the front window, half distracted, watching the sheriff's cruiser slow roll down Maple Drive. And then it stopped, right in front of the Monroe house. She stepped out. Or rather, she was helped out. 15 years ago, Sarah Monroe vanished from that very street. One minute she was riding her pink bike, a blur of tassels and innocence. The next, she was gone. No note, no scream, no witnesses. Just silence. A hole in the heart of the town that never quite healed. But now there she was. Older, taller, wearing a hospital gown under an oversized flannel. Her hair was matted, face pale, eyes unreadable. I found her, Sheriff Brookstone said later that evening, but his voice lacked conviction. Upstate. Someone dropped her off at a remote clinic and vanished. The entire town froze. Parents held their children closer. Rumors slithered through every hallway, bar, and church pew. As for me, I was 13 when Sarah disappeared. I'm 28 now. I watched from our porch as she stared at her childhood home, as if unsure it was even real. Her parents broke down on the front steps. Her mom clutched her like she was made of smoke. Her father, a typically rigid man, sobbed openly. But Sarah, she just stood there unmoved. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. Not just eerie wrong. Her posture was too stiff. Her voice too soft, too calculated. It wasn't the rawness of trauma. It was the hollowness of performance. And then there was the way she looked at her old bedroom window. Not nostalgic, not fearful. Knowing, like she'd been watching it all along. Over the next few days, she tried to settle back in. The Monroe house became a media circus. Camera crews camped outside. Headlines screamed, "Missing girl returns after 15 years. Mystery deepens." But Sarah gave nothing. No details. No names. No location. Not even a single tear. The only story she told was silence. Her mom said she was processing. Her dad refused interviews altogether. But I couldn't let it go. The way she walked by her old school, but didn't flinch. The way she asked about people who died while she was gone, with too much specificity. And then there was the dog. Their family's golden retriever, Molly, had been put down years ago. Yet, the first thing Sarah did upon entering the house was call out to her by name. Her mother said it was just confusion. Trauma does strange things. But I saw the look on Sarah's face when she realized Molly wasn't there. That wasn't confusion. It was surprise. The kind you feel when something doesn't go according to plan. The night before everything changed, I saw her again, this time outside, just standing at the edge of the woods behind her house, barefoot, eyes open wide, whispering, and I swear I saw someone, or something, whisper back. I couldn't get the image out of my head. Sarah, barefoot at the edge of the trees, whispering. To what? Or to who? That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I walked a long way to the coffee shop, looping around the Monroe property just to see if there were any signs of what I thought I saw. The woods behind their house were dense, damp, and quiet. I looked for footprints in the soft mud, but found nothing. Nothing except a small charm bracelet. It was half buried under a clump of leaves. The metal was dull, but the initials on it were clear SM. Sarah Monroe. I didn't tell anyone about it. I slipped it into my coat pocket and walked away like I hadn't just touched something haunted. Later that day, I stopped by the library. There were some things I needed to check. Old news clippings, disappearance reports, and especially the early theories people had about Sarah's vanishing. One detail stood out in an article dated July 22nd, 2010, just 3 days after Sarah was reported missing. It said that a witness, a teenager named Rebecca Jennings, claimed she saw Sarah talking to someone in the woods that morning, but her statement had been dismissed. They said Rebecca had an overactive imagination. But Rebecca was found dead 6 months later. Drowned. They called it an accident. That night, I started having dreams. I'm not the superstitious type, but these weren't just dreams. They were memories I shouldn't have. Sarah, at age 12, walking into the woods. Someone calling her name from the shadows. And a van, A black van with a dented license plate and a dream catcher hanging from the mirror. I jolted awake, heart pounding. I'd never seen that van before, but I could describe it down to the scratches on the rear bumper. How? I needed answers. I waited until 2 a.m. and walked a block to the Monroe's house. My breath fogged in the cold. There was no light on inside, except one. Sarah's room. The curtain moved. I stood still, letting the shadows hide me. She was there, staring out the window again, her face unreadable, pale in the bluish glow. And then she smiled. But it wasn't for me. It was for something behind me. I turned quickly, nothing. The woods stood quiet. Too quiet. The next morning, I did something stupid. I followed her. She left the house around 4:30 a.m., slipped out the back door barefoot again. Same as before. I stayed far enough behind not to make a sound. She walked into the trees, just as the sun was bleeding over the horizon. And then she stopped, at a clearing. That's when I saw it. A stone circle, half overgrown with moss and vines, surrounded by makeshift wooden effigies. Dozens of them, all child-sized. Sarah knelt in the center. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Then as she laughed, low, soft, the kind of laugh you hear from someone who knows things no one else should. And suddenly, she turned her head right at me, even though I hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound. I was wondering when you'd follow, she said. I froze. Her eyes glowed gold in the rising sun. Or maybe it was just the light. Maybe. Then her expression changed, sharp, almost hungry. You're not supposed to be here, she whispered. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. Coming fast. The footsteps were fast. Crunching over dried pine needles and fallen branches. I spun around, nothing. Not a soul. But the sound? Still there. Getting closer. Circling me. Like something running, just outside the edge of my sight. I turned back to Sarah. She hadn't moved. She was still kneeling in that mossy circle, head tilted, smiling like she knew I wouldn't make it out. That's when I ran. I don't remember my feet touching the ground. I don't even know how long I sprinted. Branches tore at my arms, my breath caught in my throat, and when I finally stumbled out of the trees into the edge of the Monroe property, the sun was high, and I was covered in dirt and blood. None of it mine. I didn't go to the police. Who would believe me? I'd followed a traumatized girl into the woods and saw what? Statues and shadows. Yeah, they'd love that. But I needed to know more. I started digging, online forums, missing persons reports, underground blogs where conspiracy nuts traded stories. That's when I found it. The Greystone children. 7 kids. All abducted over a span of 2 decades. All from small towns. All reappeared years later. And every single one had the same traits when they came back. Barefoot. Silent for the first few weeks. Hypersensitive to sound and light. Drawn to wooded areas. And then, eventually violent. Every single child had been involved in at least one unexplained death after their return. One kid pushed his sister out a window. Another disappeared again. Only this time his whole family was found in pieces in the basement. But the most disturbing part? Every one of them had been declared legally dead before they were found. Just like Sarah. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. That trauma made people act strange. That maybe Sarah wasn't dangerous, just broken. But then the coroner's report leaked. Mr. Monroe's body had been found last night. A neighbor had called 911 after hearing screams. His body was discovered slumped in his study. A single stab wound to the chest. No sign of forced entry. But here's the thing. His body was completely drained of blood. There were no splatters. No pooling. Nothing. Just that wound and Sarah missing. Again. Only this time. She didn't disappear into thin air. There was camera footage. The Monroes had motion detectors installed behind the property. It was old tech, grainy, but it captured movement at 2:43 a.m. Sarah walking into the woods. But not alone. There was something beside her. Tall. Distorted. Its form kept glitching in the footage, like the lens couldn't focus. Almost like the camera didn't want to record it. But you could see it, a shape, a shadow, with impossibly long arms and limbs that didn't move like a human's. Whatever it was, it followed her. Or maybe she followed it. I should have stopped there. I should have closed my laptop, deleted my notes, and pretended none of it was real. But I didn't. Because that night, taped to my door, was a torn page from a diary. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. It was Sarah's, and it said just 6 words. He wasn't my first victim. I stared at the note. He wasn't my first victim. It was like the paper vibrated in my hand. My chest tightened. The walls of my apartment suddenly felt too close, like they were inching in. There was something suffocating in those 6 words. Not just a confession, but a warning. Or maybe a challenge. Whatever it wasn't over. Not even close. The police released a statement that day. They'd found no signs of forced entry into the Monroe home. No murder weapon. No prints. No Sarah. The town whispered, of course. Poor girl must have relapsed. Trauma catches up eventually. She was always a little off. But no one said what they were really thinking. That she had brought something back with her. Or maybe she was never really alone in the first place. I visited her childhood home one last time. The house was sealed off, boarded up. Yellow tape snapped in the wind like a warning. Still, I broke in. I needed answers. The inside was rotting. Dust thick on every surface, furniture half covered in sheets. But in Sarah's old room, there was something new. Something deliberate. The walls were covered in symbols, not drawn or painted. Carved. Deep, violent strokes. Circles, slashes, eyes, and something like a gateway. At the center of the room was a small mattress, old and stained, and on it lay a stack of drawings. Childlike, messy, but unmistakable. They were of the woods, of the circle, of the thing. Some drawings showed it standing behind her. Others showed her kneeling before it, bleeding, smiling. One image made me drop the whole pile. It was a picture of me, standing in the woods, surrounded by trees that bent in unnatural shapes. And behind me, that same figure, looming, with its arms stretched toward my back, touching me. I ran, all the way back to my apartment, locked the door, poured salt along the windowsills, like the forum said. I even burned sage. Every room, every corner. But it didn't matter, because that night I heard a knock at the door. 3 soft taps. Like it wasn't in a hurry. Like it knew I'd answer eventually. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Hours passed. At dawn, I cracked the door open, heart pounding in my throat. No one was there. Just a package. Inside was Sarah's diary. The last entry was dated the day before she came home. He says I'm ready now. That I can go back. But only if I bring someone with me. A gift. An offering. I don't want to. I don't. But he's in my dreams. He's in the trees. And he's hungry. I hope they never find me. I hope they burn these woods to the ground. I closed the diary. And that's when I saw it, carved into the back cover. My name. I haven't slept in days. When I do, I see the forest. I see Sarah, standing just beyond the tree line, smiling, inviting me in. Sometimes, I think I hear her whispering from the dark. And every night, the knocks come closer, louder, more patient. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. But if you're reading this, if you find this recording, whatever you do, don't follow her into the woods.